Donald Trump is not doing well, as I'm sure you can assume. He has now become a convicted felon, and he's not taking the news well. We've seen this in a few different settings. Now I want to show you his latest batch of videos that he posted. This is the place, his little therapy sessions where he screams about different things at this camera and then posts it to his Truth Social account, and always does a series of them each time that he makes these posts. So the first one is him declaring that he's a political prisoner in a failed nation. Here it is.
I am the political prisoner of a failing nation, but I will soon be free on November 5th, the most important day in the history of our country, and we will together make America great again. Thank you.
The founding of the country? Nah, not quite as important as Trump winning the election, I guess. And Warren wrote on X, record stock market, falling inflation, low unemployment. We're good. It's just you, bro. And obviously, we're not good in the sense that everything is not fine. We need to keep working. There are major, major issues that need to be addressed. We're still dealing with the aftermath of the pandemic conditions that Trump mismanaged. But again, the sort of gap between reality and perception on how Biden's handled the recovery is so huge, and it blows my mind. And it's going to be what decides this election. If we can't close that gap between perception and reality, then we're done for, probably. But I think we can close the gap. And what I mean is the horrific set of circumstances that Biden had to inherit, and Trump was making worse with his disastrous mishandling of them. Within the control that Biden had, he has done a pretty dang solid job, has been very effective in overseeing a recovery, pulling us out of that crisis. And so that, I think, is the pushback against Trump's failed nation. We're rising out of a really horrible situation. And part of that you can give credit to Biden for. But also, I think you have a more general phenomenon here that we've been talking about, which is that MAGA doesn't even try, it seems, to label themselves as patriotic anymore. Maybe they do. They'd probably disagree with me on that. But they definitely don't embody patriotism. And I think Democrats need to do a better job now of taking back that label. Because this, from Trump, is not patriotism. This is not loving your country. And we talked about in a segment about Colin Cowherd, who is a Fox Sports host. He talked about how Trump's trying to sell us an idea of America that doesn't exist, that we're collapsing, that we're a failed nation, that there's nothing great now. And it's him who could make us great again. And that needs to be called out by anyone who understands the stakes of this election. Here's this next moment.
Joe Biden's not too old to be president. I know a lot of people that are older than him, and they're at the top of their game. It's not even close. But he is too incompetent, and he is too corrupt. He's the worst president in the history of our country. Thank you.
So I have heard him make this case a few times now. I think he gets insecure when people say that the issue with Biden is his age, because Trump understands he's pretty dang close in age to Biden. So then he wants people to instead believe it's just Biden's incompetent. But obviously, if we're talking about competence, Biden is far superior to Donald Trump. That's for sure. I forgot to even mention about the first clip, Trump's not a political prisoner. That should be said since it was the thesis of that first video. Here's the next one.
Large-scale mounting evidence that all of the unprecedented number of lawsuits brought against me, the witch hunt, are conceived of and coordinated by the White House and DOJ and, frankly, crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of our country.
I'm going to really quickly pause your viewing of this video to ask that you subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you're liking the content, one major way you can help to continue growing this show, and that's just clicking that subscribe button. Easy, free, but like I said, it makes a huge difference.
Such a disgrace, all done illegally to help crooked Joe fight his political opponent. That happens to be me. But the people are wise to it. We're going to make America great again. November 5th is going to be the most important day in the history of our country. That's when our country is going to turn around.
Right. So you notice that he said there's large-scale mounting evidence that all of Trump's legal troubles are somehow coordinated by Biden, and then doesn't cite any evidence. If there's so much, cite one bit of evidence, one scrap. But he can't. It's just an idea. And we remember there was a clip of him getting asked, I think it was by a local news reporter, said, well, there's no evidence that Biden coordinated this. And Trump said, oh, there's evidence, but you don't even need evidence. You can tell just from common sense. But there's also evidence, but then didn't cite it again because there's not. And it is sort of another contradiction of a previously stated value. We've talked about all of them when it comes to the no one's above the law and order, party family values, all the ways that now Republican support for Trump are contradicting past principles they purported to have. Another one is sort of the personal responsibility thing. Instead of Trump, both with him losing the election 2020 and with having so many different legal troubles in so many different jurisdictions, you have criminal and civil, just all over the place, so many different things. And instead of realizing, oh, wait, it's probably because he's doing a bunch of stuff that's bringing this onto him, they have to create these complex webs of conspiracy theories, again, with the elections and with his legal troubles, to take all the personal responsibility away from him. He doesn't have to have any of it. It's being done to him always. He's always the biggest victim. Here's the next video.
My civil rights have been totally violated with this highly political, unconstitutional, and election-interfering witch hunt of a trial. Our failing nation is being laughed at all over the world for what's happening. But we're going to go forward and we're going to make America better than ever before. November 5th is the most important day in the history of our country. And we're going to get out there and we're going to vote like never before.
So again, he posts these posts right back to back. But then they're so repetitive. And I've said it before, I was watching, unfortunately, I subjected myself to this, a full Trump interview as we're preparing for a segment. And he is really deteriorating. Where obviously these are scripted, but in the interview, he can't communicate a coherent thought for any meaningful period of time. And he'll instantly fall back to, sort of as a crutch, when he can't exactly figure out how to answer a question. But we're a failing nation because they're coming from jails, they're coming from insane. And he has these few talking points that he can repeat a few times. But then otherwise, he's really struggling to think of new creative ways to articulate himself. But I guess if you want to classify this in a strategic way, maybe he thinks that, again, I do think it's deterioration. But on top of that, he has always been a repeater because I think he believes if he repeats something enough times, then people are more likely to believe it. So rigged trial. They're coming from jails. They're coming from insane asylums. Rigged election, right? And if he can say it 10 billion times, then maybe his followers will think surely he wouldn't say this that many times if it were a lie. Him repeating constantly that every single legal expert thinks this trial has no basis. Not true, but he said it so many times that I had people in my life who pay attention a little bit to politics saying, wait, is that true? Do all legal experts think it's bad? No, but he said it tons of times. So some of it is just him trying to, what have I said before? The hypnotization attempt, right? If I can just convince you this is true by saying it over and putting you to sleep intellectually. Here's the next one.
After sitting for 5 weeks through that rigged trial in Lower Manhattan, which was surrounded by vast but unnecessary numbers of New York's finest in order to keep law-abiding MAGA patriots away, and as I watched insignificant numbers of fully funded radical left troublemakers with brand new and gleaming professionally made signs, screaming and cursing from areas said to be close to us and all others, I realized that reason, truth, and love of our country is no longer a force of good and change. These are dark days in America, but we will make America great again.
What? That last part didn't make a whole lot of sense. Reason and love are no longer forces of good? Is that what he said? Strange. But his statements about how, as he's repeated a bunch of times, how his supporters weren't allowed to be around the courthouse. That's why it seemed like no one was there to support him. Then you have people going on the ground, and there's like 2 Trump supporters in the space that Trump's referring to. So you can get there, just no one's coming to go there. So he's just fabricating that. But I want to read to you something that really puts into perspective in this moment, now that Trump's a convicted felon, just how far the Republican Party has been willing to go in service of Trump. Jojo from Jers wrote this on X. When he called Mexicans rapists, Republicans moved the line. When he mocked a disabled reporter, they moved the line. And I read this already on the bonus show for our members, but want to do it for everyone. When he demeaned John McCain for being a POW and insulted a Gold Star family, they moved the line. When he bragged about grabbing women by the P word, they moved the line. When he extorted Ukraine, shut down the government to pay for the wall Mexico was supposed to pay for and didn't, took his daddy Vladdy's side over our own intelligence agencies, said Nazis were very fine people, and praised murderous despots, they moved the line. When he bungled a pandemic, asked about injecting disinfectants, engulfed while thousands of Americans were dying a day, they moved the line. When he refused to accept the results of the election, plotted a coup, and incited an attack against our capital, they moved the line. When his gilded golf motel was searched by the FBI because he had our national security secrets in his effing bathroom, they moved the line. When he was incited for the first time, they moved the line. Then they moved it again for the second, third, and fourth times. When he was found liable of sexual abuse what the judge said could be referred to as rape, they moved the line. Then they moved it again when he was found liable of business fraud. And now he's a convicted felon. A jury of his peers reached unanimous agreement that he was guilty on all 34 counts. And what are they doing? They're moving the line. There isn't a thing he could do ever, or thing he could ever do that they won't accommodate. Nothing. And she says he could set fire to the Declaration of Independence while boberting Putin and shouting death to America at the same time on TikTok Live, and they twist themselves into whatever the F kind of pretzels they needed to in order for it not to cross a line, and then ends it with a punch there that I'll not read. So when you put it, as I said on the bonus show, when you put it all in one place, it's hard to process. This is real. This is not some story about something that's so absurd you couldn't possibly imagine it in the real world. It's real. And I think that right when Trump came onto the scene, right when the Republican Party, let's say, coalesced around Trump, after he'd been on the scene a little bit, in that moment, if you'd gone to some of these Republicans and said, okay, if, and then you read all that stuff, if he does all of this, promise me now that you'll abandon him, they would probably hyperbolic Trump derangement syndrome, you liberal. But then that's what happened, and they're not willing to abandon him. And that really is a very, very disturbing indictment of the modern Republican Party. It's not even a functioning, governing political party anymore. It's just Trump's personal organization, his personal political organization. And I guess there's a little bit more work to be done on this front, but almost all of your moderate, more rational Republicans have either voluntarily removed themselves or have been booted. And my message is to any rational Republicans out there, just because you've identified with this party for a long time, and just because you don't feel like you identify as a Democrat, and those are sort of the two options, or somewhere in between, know that this moment isn't about our past policy differences. This is an existential, high stakes type of moment. And so it's perfectly acceptable for you to abandon the more comfortable path of least resistance label and side with the pro-democracy, pro-constitution movement right now. And that is the Democratic candidate. Let me know what you thought of all that in the comments. And I mentioned a couple times already that I do a daily bonus show. I haven't been plugging that enough, so I need to let you know. If you want to get access to that, all it takes is somewhere near the subscribe and the ring bell and all that, you can click the join button, and that'll get you access to the daily bonus show where you can support the work we're doing by becoming a member.